My brother's best friend used to ignore me. Now he sneaks into my room at night. When I was younger, I used to think the world revolved around my older brother and his friends. They were loud, confident, and full of the kind of careless energy that comes with being 17 when you've just gotten your driver's license and the world suddenly feels wide open. I was the shadow in the corner. 3 years younger, awkward, skinny, and so desperate to be noticed that I'd linger in the living room when my brother had people over, pretending to do homework but really just trying to catch pieces of their laughter, their stories, their careless confidence. And then there was him, Ethan, my brother's best friend. The boy who lived 2 houses down, who was practically another member of our family because he was always around. His shoes by the door, his laughter echoing down the hall, his voice deepening in a way mine hadn't yet. He was the kind of boy who seemed untouchable to someone like me. Broad-shouldered from years of football, always with messy brown hair that looked like it had been kissed by the sun, and a smile that could disarm anyone, except me, because he never smiled at me, at least not in the way I wanted. When I was 13, Ethan was 16, and he treated me the way you treat your best friend's younger sibling, like I was furniture in the room. A nuisance sometimes, a shadow most of the time, and occasionally a punchline when I'd say something dumb. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. He just didn't see me. And God, I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at the girls who gathered around him after football games. I wanted him to notice the way I sat on the edge of the couch, pretending to scroll on my phone but listening to every word he said. I wanted him to think I mattered. But back then, to him, I didn't. It wasn't until years later that everything began to change. I turned 16 the summer before my brother left for college. Suddenly, I wasn't just the kid brother anymore. I'd gotten taller, my voice had deepened, and I'd filled out just enough that I didn't look like the awkward boy I used to be. People at school started noticing me. Girls smiling at me in the hallways, friends asking if I was going to join sports. But Ethan noticed too. He was 19 then, home for the summer after his first year of college, and he was over at our house constantly, helping my brother pack or just hanging out like he always had. Except this time, his eyes lingered when they passed over me. I catch him watching me when I wasn't looking, and when I did look back, he'd glance away too quickly, pretending nothing had happened. For the first time, I felt like he was really seeing me. Started small. One night, my brother had already gone to bed, and I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when Ethan walked in. He leaned against the counter, shirt hanging loose, hair messy from the summer heat. "You've grown up," he said, and I remember nearly choking on my water. "What?" He grinned at me then, the first grin I'd ever felt directed just at me. "You're not the scrawny kid trailing after us anymore. You've changed." I didn't know what to say. My face burned. My heart thudded, and I just stood there like an idiot. But after that night, something shifted. The first time he came into my room at night, it was almost an accident. At least that's what he claimed. My brother had already left for college by then, and Ethan came over often, still part of the family even though his best friend wasn't around. My parents adored him, trusted him, and never questioned why he was over so much. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I heard the creak of my door and turned to see him standing there, silhouetted in the dim light from the hallway. "Can't sleep," he whispered. I didn't even have time to process before he closed the door and sat down at the edge of my bed. My chest tightened as I pulled my blanket closer, unsure of what to say, of what this meant. We talked quietly for hours. About college, about how weird it felt for him to come home and find everything smaller than he remembered, about how he sometimes felt like he didn't fit anywhere. And then he asked about me. Really asked. Like he wanted to know. No one had ever made me feel that scene before. When he finally left, the sky was already lightening, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, knowing something between us had shifted again. He came back the next night, and the night after that. First, it was just talking. Whispered conversations in the dark, secrets traded like currency. But soon it became something else. Our shoulders brushing in the quiet, his hand resting too close to mine. A pause in his words when I licked my lips nervously. The first time he touched me, really touched me, It was almost imperceptible. His fingers grazed mine under the blanket, hesitant, testing. And when I didn't pull away, he laced his hand through mine and held it there. I swear my whole body lit up like electricity was running through me. It was dangerous. We both knew it. He was my brother's best friend. He wasn't supposed to want me. I wasn't supposed to want him. But lying there in the dark with his hand in mine, it didn't matter. Felt inevitable. Looking back now, I don't know how we managed to keep it secret for so long. The stolen moments, the lingering touches, the way he'd sneak into my room once my parents were asleep. Felt like we were living in a dream. Fragile, dangerous, but intoxicating. And even though there were nights I lay awake terrified of what would happen if anyone found out, there was also this undeniable, overwhelming truth pulsing in my chest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. Ethan saw me, and I couldn't stop myself from falling. The thing about secrets is that they don't just sit quietly in the corner of your life. They grow, they change, they begin to shape the way you move and breathe and look at the world. Every morning after Ethan snuck out of my room, I would carry that secret around like a live wire beneath my skin. At breakfast with my parents, I'd feel the ghost of his hand still threaded through mine. When I walked down the street, I'd replay the hushed words he'd whispered in the dark. Words that sounded heavier than friendship but lighter than promises. And whenever he came over during the day, when the sun was streaming through the windows and we were supposed to be nothing more than my brother's best friend and the younger sibling, I'd feel it in the way he looked at me. It was never obvious. Never enough for anyone else to notice. But for me, every glance lasted a beat too long. Every smile felt like it was meant just for me. Every casual touch burned like fire on my skin. One afternoon, I walked into the living room to find him sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. My parents were out, the house was quiet, and for a moment it was just us. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. He looked up and grinned. "Hey yourself." I sat down on the opposite end of the couch, trying to ignore the pounding in my chest. For a few minutes we just sat there in the comfortable silence we had learned to share. And then he set his phone down, leaned back, and said, "Do you ever feel like you're living two different lives?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" He stared at the ceiling. "Like, there's the version of you everyone sees. The one that laughs at the right times, does the right things. And then there's the real you. The one you only let out when no one's watching." I knew exactly what he meant. All the time. His eyes found mine then, and the weight of what he wasn't saying pressed heavy between us. In that moment, it was like the entire world narrowed down to the space on that couch. And then, without thinking, he reached over and touched my hand. Not like the tentative brushes we'd shared in the dark, but openly, in the daylight. My breath caught. "You're the only person I feel like I can be real with," he said quietly. I wanted to tell him I felt the same, that I didn't care if this was dangerous, or secret, or complicated. That as long as it was him, I'd take it. But the words stuck in my throat, tangled up in fear. Because what if I said it out loud, and it ruined everything? The nights became heavier after that. More charged. We were walking a tightrope, teetering between the safety of what we knew and the freefall of what we wanted. One night, lying side by side on my bed, our shoulders pressed together, he turned his head toward me and whispered, "Do you ever think about what this means?" My heart raced. "All the time." And I swallowed hard. "And I don't care. I just know I want this." For a long moment, he didn't say anything. The silence stretched, suffocating. And then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, he whispered back, "Me too." Something broke open in me then. The longing I had carried for years, the ache of being unseen, the desperation to matter, suddenly poured out in a rush. Before I could stop myself, I turned my face toward his, and in the dark, I kissed him. It was clumsy, tentative, and my whole body was trembling, but it was real. His lips against mine, his breath warm, his hands sliding up to cup the back of my neck. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine and whispered, "We shouldn't." But then he kissed me again. And I knew, without a doubt, that we were already too far gone to turn back. The days that followed were a blur of stolen touches, whispered words, and the quiet terror of being found out. Every time he came over, I felt the weight of my parents' trust pressing against me like a warning. Every time he smiled at me across the dinner table, I fought to keep my expression neutral. But at night, none of that mattered. At night, when the world was asleep, he belonged to me. Of course, it couldn't stay simple. Secrets never do. One evening, I was in the kitchen grabbing a snack when I heard my mom laughing in the living room. She was talking to Ethan. "You're over here more than you are at your own house," she teased. And then, without missing a beat, she added, "You'll make some girl very lucky one day." I froze, my stomach twisting. Ethan chuckled, but there was something in his voice I recognized, something strained. "Yeah, maybe." I wanted to scream, to burst into the room and shout, "It's not a girl, it's me," to tell the truth that was clawing at my chest, even if it tore everything apart. But instead, I stayed silent, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. Because I knew, no matter how much I wanted him, no matter how much he wanted me, the world wasn't ready for us. Maybe we weren't ready for us. And that realization, it hurt more than anything. But still, when night came, I listened for the sound of my door creaking open. Still, I made space for him beside me. Still, I let him hold me like we were the only two people who existed. Because even if the daylight didn't belong to us, the night did. And for now, that was enough. At least, I told myself it was. But deep down, I knew secrets always come with a cost. The cost came sooner than I expected. It happened on a night that felt just like all the others. Quiet, heavy with summer air, my parents asleep down the hall. Ethan had slipped into my room, his familiar shadow easing across the floor before the soft weight of him sank into the mattress beside me. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. His hand rested against my chest, feeling the thud of my heartbeat, and I traced absent circles on his forearm. I was half drifting into sleep when the sound shattered the silence. A knock, quick, sharp, too loud in the stillness. My blood ran cold. "Hey, you awake?" My brother's voice, muffled through the door but unmistakable. Ethan's hand shot away from me like I'd burned him. He sat up, panic flashing across his face. My mind raced. He wasn't supposed to be home. He wasn't supposed to be here. This isn't supposed to be happening.
He scrambled, whispering frantically, "Closet, go."
He hesitated only a second before slipping across the room and into the darkness of my closet, pulling the door shut behind him just as mine swung open. My brother stood there, grinning sleepily. "Dude, you still stay up this late?" I just got in and thought I'd say hey. I tried to laugh, my voice shaky. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." He didn't notice. He stepped into the room, dropping onto the edge of my bed like he always used to when we were younger. My heart hammered as I glanced toward the closet, half expecting Ethan to burst out any second. We talked for a few minutes, small talk, nothing important. But every second dragged. Every word scraped against the inside of my chest. Finally, he yawned, patted my leg and said, "Good night, little bro." The door clicked shut. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My whole body shook. The closet door opened slowly, and Ethan stepped out, pale, his jaw tight. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he whispered, "This is insane. We're going to get caught." I didn't know what to say, because he was right. But I also knew the thought of him walking away from me, of him leaving this behind, hurt worse than anything. The next few days, he pulled back. When he came over, he kept his distance. No lingering looks across the dinner table, no brushing past me in the hallway, no midnight visits. It was like he had decided the closet incident was proof that this was too dangerous, too reckless. I felt the absence like a physical ache. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a door that never opened. Finally, one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered him in the backyard after dinner, where the cicadas buzzed loud enough to mask our voices. "Why are you avoiding me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He rubbed the back of his neck, not meeting my eyes. I'm not. I think we need to slow down. Slow down. My chest tightened. Or stop. Silence. The night air pressed heavy around us. He finally looked at me then, his eyes full of something I couldn't untangle, fear, longing, guilt. I don't know if I can do this. Your brother trusts me. Your parents trust me. And if anyone ever found out, I don't care. I interrupted, my voice breaking. I don't care if it's wrong or messy or if the whole world hates it. I can't pretend you don't mean everything to me. The words hung there, trembling between us. For a second, I thought he was going to walk away. I thought I'd ruined it by saying too much. But then, slowly, he stepped closer. His hand cupped my face, rough and warm, and his forehead pressed against mine. "You're going to break me," he whispered. And then he kissed me. Not like the tentative, fragile kisses we'd shared before. This one was desperate, hungry, full of everything he'd been holding back. My knees nearly buckled under the weight of it. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, he said, "I can't stay away from you, even if I should." That night, he came back into my room. And the night after that. But the difference now was that it wasn't just secret touches and hushed words. It was something deeper. Something that terrified me because it felt like love. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. The way his thumb brushed my cheek like he was memorizing the shape of me. The way he whispered my name like it was something precious. I knew then that this wasn't just a fling or a mistake. At least not for me. I was falling for him. Hard. And even though I knew it couldn't last, that the world outside my bedroom door would never understand, I clung to every moment like it was the only one we'd ever have. Because maybe it was. The funny thing about falling in love is that it makes you reckless. You start to believe in impossibilities. You start to imagine futures that could never exist. I found myself daydreaming about what it would be like if he wasn't my brother's best friend. If he was just mine. About walking down the street with his hand in mine. About kissing him in the daylight instead of only in the dark. And I started to believe maybe, just maybe, it could happen. But deep down, I knew the truth. Secrets have a way of coming out. And ours was no exception. The unraveling began with something small. A glance, a smile. Nothing anyone else should have noticed. But my mom did. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of lazy day where the whole family was sprawled around the living room. My brother was home from college for the weekend, stretched out in the recliner, Ethan on the couch beside him. I was sitting on the floor, leaning against the coffee table, pretending to watch the movie on TV. And then it happened. I looked up at Ethan, and he was already looking at me. It wasn't one of our quick, hidden glances. It lingered, soft and unguarded. And for a second, the whole room blurred around him. My lips curved before I could stop them, and he smiled back. Small, almost imperceptible, but real. When I glanced away, my mom was watching us. Her brows furrowed ever so slightly, and something sharp twisted in my stomach. She didn't say anything. Not then, not later. But I knew she had seen it. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. A week later, she cornered me in the kitchen. I was putting dishes away when she said, too casually, "You and Ethan seem close lately." My hand froze on a plate. Yeah, I guess. She tilted her head, studying me. "You know, honey, sometimes people can misinterpret things. And I'd hate for anyone to get the wrong idea." Her tone was careful, measured, but underneath it I heard the warning. The suspicion. Heat rushed to my face, and I mumbled something about homework before escaping upstairs. My heart pounded as I shut my door, my thoughts spiraling. Had she figured it out? Was she going to tell my dad? My brother? Ethan? That night, when Ethan slipped into my room, I told him. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "We have to be more careful," he whispered finally. But I heard what he didn't say. Maybe this can't last. The tension between us grew after that. We still found each other in the dark, still whispered secrets against the quiet hum of the night. But there was a new edge to everything, like we were racing against time. One evening, as he traced circles on my palm, I whispered, "Do you ever wish things were different? That we didn't have to hide?" He sighed, his chest rising and falling beneath my cheek. "Every day. Then why don't we—" I stopped, the words catching in my throat. "Why don't we what?" He pressed softly. "Tell someone. Anyone. Just stop pretending." He stiffened, his hand stilling in mine. "You don't understand what that would mean." I lifted my head, meeting his eyes in the dark. "Then explain it to me." For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "It would mean losing everything. Your brother, your parents, maybe even each other. Because once people know, they don't forget. And they don't forgive." The words sank heavy into me, heavier than I wanted to admit. But I couldn't help whispering, "I don't care. I just want you." His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like desperation. "I want you too," he murmured against my lips. "But wanting you and keeping you, those aren't the same thing." A few weeks later, everything came crashing down. It was late, well past midnight, when the knock came at my door. But it wasn't Ethan's soft, familiar tap. It was loud, firm, demanding. Before I could even sit up, the door swung open. My brother, and behind him, Ethan. But Ethan wasn't coming into my room this time. He was standing frozen in the hallway, eyes wide, face pale, like a deer caught in headlights. "What the hell is going on?" my brother snapped. The world tilted sideways. My mouth went dry, couldn't breathe. My brother's eyes darted from me, sitting upright in bed, to Ethan hovering in the hall. His face hardened. "Don't tell me," he broke off, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me." "Wait," Ethan started, but my brother cut him off. "How long?" His voice cracked like a whip. "How long has this been going on?" Silence. The kind that swallows everything whole. Finally, my brother's gaze locked on me, burning, furious. "You?" His voice shook with betrayal. "My own brother?" Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. My throat ached, but no words came. And Ethan didn't say anything either. That was the night everything shattered. My brother stormed out, slamming doors and shattering trust in ways I didn't know could ever be repaired. My parents found out soon after. He told them everything, his voice laced with anger and hurt. The house erupted into shouting, questions, tears. And Ethan? He disappeared. No more late-night visits. No more whispers in the dark. No more him. Just silence. And me, alone in the wreckage of the only thing that had ever made me feel whole. For weeks, I walked around like a ghost. My brother barely looked at me, my parents avoided the subject altogether, and Ethan, it was like he had never existed. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he had looked at me like I was the only person in the world. About the nights we'd shared, the words we'd whispered, the love I'd felt. Was it love? Or was it just a secret that had burned too bright and too fast? I didn't know. All I knew was that the silence he left behind hurt more than anything. And deep down, I wondered if I'd ever see him again. The silence stretched into months. At first, I thought he'd show up. That one night, I'd hear that familiar creak of my door, and he'd be standing there again, messy hair, soft eyes, whispering my name like nothing had changed. I stayed up waiting, listening for footsteps that never came. But the nights stayed empty, and slowly, I realized he wasn't coming back. My brother barely spoke to me. When he did, his words were sharp, clipped, full of anger he didn't know how to disguise. "You don't get it," he snapped once when I tried to apologize. "He was my best friend, my brother, and you—" He cut himself off, shaking his head like the words themselves were poison. "You ruined everything." I wanted to tell him I hadn't meant to, that I hadn't set out to fall for Ethan, that it wasn't some plan to betray him, that it just happened. But I knew nothing I said would matter, because in his eyes, I hadn't just broken a rule. I'd broken him. School wasn't much better. Word had spread, though no one knew the full truth. Whispers followed me in the hallways, snickers behind my back. I never knew exactly what people had heard, but it didn't matter. I had become the story, the gossip, the punchline, and Ethan, he had vanished into silence. He stopped coming to our house, stopped answering my texts, stopped being anything more than a memory I couldn't let go of. The absence hurt worse than the judgment, worse than the anger, worse than everything, because no matter how much it destroyed me, I still loved him. It wasn't until winter, 6 months after everything fell apart, that I saw him again. I was walking home from school, my breath clouding in the cold air, when a car slowed beside me. For a moment, I didn't recognize it. But then the window rolled down and there he was. Ethan, older somehow, tired. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in months, I felt the world tilt back into place. "Get in," he said quietly. I hesitated only a second before sliding into the passenger seat. We drove in silence for a while, the heater blowing warm against my frozen fingers. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why'd you disappear?" My voice cracked. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Because I had to. Your brother, your family, they hated me. I couldn't just keep making things worse." "You left me," I whispered. He flinched like the words physically hurt. "I know." The quiet stretched, heavy, suffocating. Finally, he pulled the car over to the side of the road, turning toward me. His eyes were glassy, full of everything he'd been holding back. "I thought staying away would make it easier," he said. "For you, for everyone. But it didn't. I can't stop thinking about you." My heart ached, both from relief and anger. "Then why didn't you come back sooner?" "Because I'm scared." His voice broke. "Scared of ruining your life. Scared of what it means if I admit what this is." I swallowed hard. "And what is it?" For a long moment he just looked at me. Then softly, "It's love." The words cracked me open. All the months of silence, of aching, of wondering if I had imagined it all. They shattered under the weight of that truth. I reached for him, my hand trembling, and when his fingers closed around mine, it was like coming home. "I don't care if it ruins everything," I whispered. "I just want you." He leaned forward then, pressing his forehead to mine, and in that moment, with the cold night pressing against the car windows and the world outside fading into nothing, I knew. Whatever this was, messy, complicated, forbidden, it was real, and sometimes real is worth the risk. Of course, it wasn't simple after that. My brother still didn't speak to me. My parents tread carefully, their disappointment simmering beneath every word. The world didn't magically accept us, and the fear never fully went away. But Ethan came back. Not just in the night, not just in secrets. He came back to me, and even if the world wasn't ready for us, we were ready for each other. For the first time, that felt like enough. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive the way it's supposed to. Sometimes it sneaks in through the cracks, dangerous and reckless and impossible. But it's still love. And love, no matter how complicated, is worth holding on to.